Assalamu alaikum, dear students. So, considering that you now do have a sound knowledge of natural selection as one of the primary mechanisms of evolution, Darwinian evolution, we will probe deeper into natural selection today. We will look into the different modes of selection. It happens, but then in certain cases, it happens with some variation. Depending on what it does to the population, we have classified the modes of selection into these three types: the stabilizing, the directional, and the disruptive, as you can see. So, the stabilizing selection is the one in which it is also called the centripetal selection, and this type of selection is of an intermediate value. So remember, yesterday I had showed you a chart of stature in human beings, in which we saw how a certain range of height is more frequent in the populations, and if there is any extreme case of height, more height or less height, both, then that is selected against, and that average value of, let's say, birth weight or let's say height, it is maintained in the population. That is called stabilizing or centripetal selection. The next type is the directional selection. Directional selection is the one that is preferred by animal and plant breeders. Say, for example, all these different varieties of dogs that we have them only because some dog breeders have taken interest and they have selected those desired characters in their population which they wanted in the dog breed that they were developing. Say, for example, the Pomeranian. The Pomeranian is a very furry, cute little dog, and it is very different from the street dog that we see. How has the Pomeranian come to be? Because the breeders, they allowed the furry ones to mate. They selected in favor of the furry, the ones with the heavy fur, and that's how this variety of dogs is what we have. So with all types of dogs, Dalmatians and Chihuahuas, the desired character in the population is selected, and in this case the stabilizing character of the population, that is selected against, and the mean, it shifts a little ahead. And then there is disruptive selection. Disruptive selection, which takes place when the conditions in the environment, they oscillate and the population is subjected to divergent or cyclically changing environments, and according to these environments there are different genotypes that are suited, and this kind of selection, it even leads to speciation, sympatric speciation. We will look at what is sympatric speciation and how is it different from allopatric speciation in detail. So let's one by one look at these three types of selections. So the first is your stabilizing or progressive or centripetal selection. Now look at this diagram in front of you. This is a very simple example. Let us say there is a particular species of bird in which the normal clutch size, you know what is clutch size? The number of eggs per laying season is called a clutch size. So if the clutch size normally is 4. Now why it is 4? Because if it is less than 4, 1 or 2, then the minimum population viability may not be maintained, and this will be against the fitness of that species. Now you know what is fitness. Fitness is not only about an individual's ability to survive, but it is basically about the reproductive fitness. So this species of birds that is supposed to produce 4 eggs in a clutch size, if it produces 1 or 2 eggs, then the viability of its future generation, of its offspring, will be badly affected. So the one extreme of low clutch size is not preferred by natural selection, and on the other hand there is an extreme of high clutch size. Now if instead of 4 the this species of bird it starts producing uh, 6, 8, 10 eggs, this will be on the other extreme. So on the one extreme we have low clutch size, on the other extreme we have very high clutch size, and both are not good for this species, because on the one hand where the low clutch size is bad for the viability of the population, the high clutch size will also have a bearing on the investment that the parent of the species has to do on the clutch. The fledglings, they might be malnourished, or the parent may not be able to guard the nest so well. There may be predation of eggs, predation of the offspring, the fledglings, and hence the overall reproductive fitness of the species will be badly affected. So there is an average value, which is the intermediate value, which is being selected. Now this type of selection is called stabilizing selection. It brings a stability in the population. So the impact of this type of selection on the population is that it is not very good. It narrows down the phenotype of the population. And as you know, strength lies in diversity. So if there is a small range of diversity of character that is found in the population as a result of this type of selection, stabilizing selection, then in the long run the population weakens. It weakens because in the phenotype very few characters are found. And if very few characters are found in the phenotype, in case there is a change, a sudden change, a disruption in the environment in future, then this phenotype will not be able to cope up with that change, and then it will have to be eliminated in competition. So as the extremes are selected against, the average is more prevalent, and this low variation in the genetic diversity does not encourage survival fitness as well as future evolution. So this was about the stabilizing selection. Please remember the graph when you look at this graph that we made as part the graph of normal distribution that is found almost everywhere in nature. This graph that we made, please remember that graph, because the other two graphs are going to be slightly different from what we are doing right now in stabilizing. Now the second type of selection is the directional selection. We have already discussed this type of change in the environment. Say for example, in the light of the Industrial Revolution, the grey moths were not selected, they were selected against, and the black moths were selected, they were favored by natural selection, and hence you can see that this normal distribution curve with these two extremes, it has completely shifted a little forward. So while the graph of the original population is this, the graph of the population after natural selection, that is the graph of the population after so much of change in the environment has occurred because of Industrial Revolution and because of sootiness growing in the environment and because of the backgrounds on which these moths are surviving darkening, we have selection favoring this dark color moth, and this is selected, and this is what happens to the population after the directional selection has taken place. So a sudden change in the environment, it results in the directional selection, and this is the kind of selection that is also practiced by plant breeders as well as it is practiced by the animal breeders. Now we will look at the implications on the population. What happens to the population when there is this kind of directional selection in the population? The homozygous individuals of this type, of the type that are favored by the environment, they become numerous as compared to the heterozygous individuals, as well as those homozygous individuals which are homozygous in some other allele. It's slightly complicated. Now let us put it in the context of the example that we have just discussed. Say for example, in this moth population that we have just discussed in the light of the Industrial Revolution, say for example, at one extreme there were moths of a different color, and at the other extreme there were moths of a different color, and the intermediate value was that of the grey moths. Now the environment became sooty, it became dark, and one extreme of dark individuals was selected. What if what now imagine what would have happened to those individuals who were at the other extreme? They were also homozygous, they were not heterozygous, but they were selected against because the environment changed not in their favor. So this is the implication on the population. Homozygosity grows in a population after directional selection. You can notice that in case of all kinds of plant breeds and all kinds of animal breeds that you see like here and there, that they are homozygous mainly. And selecting one type of trait is not good